Hello, everyone. Praying that you all had a very, very great weekend, a good 4th of July, even though it was different. I know my family and I had a great 4th of July, hanging out with friends and family, friends that are family to us, ate some great food, just had a great time and a really good time. Now, we all know that we're living in some crazy times, we're living in some different times, we're living in some challenging times, we're living in some very weird times. But if there's ever a time for us to place our faith and trust in God, it's now. Of course, we should be doing that every day, but now we should be placing more faith and more trust in God. So today we're going to be in the book of Psalms, chapter 27, verses 1 through 4. And here, King David, well, not King David, he wasn't king yet, but David, during this time when he wrote this, was declaring his faith to God, making a declaration of faith to God. And there's so much for us to learn from this. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading verses 1 through 4. Here we go. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? And this is the thing. Salvation, finds us in the dark. Salvation finds us in the dark. And not only when we weren't saved and when God delivered us, but even when we're living in dark times or dark situations, God is our salvation. He's our deliverer, and he will pull us out of that light. Now it continues to say, the Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked came against me to eat up my flesh, my enemies and foes, they stumbled and fell. And here David is talking about his past deliverances. He's being reminded, he's reminding himself of how God has delivered him in the past and how God's going to continue to deliver him, no matter how hard the circumstances look or are. He goes on to continue saying, verse 3, though an army may encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war may rise against me, in this I will be confident. I grew up in a military town, and I've had military friends that have been in Afghanistan, been in Iraq, and what they do say is that when they're about to go into war, man, sometimes you feel this doubtlessness of that you're going to live because of what's about to come. There's that distress that goes on through that, but even through that, David was still confident in God. Verse 4, one thing I have desired of the Lord that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. David right here was always wanting to be close to God. He was always wanting to be near to God's presence. So we have so much to learn about what David's saying here. Now again, during this time, this is during the time where David was exiled from home, and he was being hunted by King Saul and King Saul's men. And if you're not familiar with the text, King Saul was envious of David because David was a great warrior. People looked up to David as a leader. David had God's favor, and Saul was very jealous. So Saul was trying to hunt him down and kill him. But this is the crazy thing. Even though David was being hunted by him, knowing that Saul wanted to kill him, David still respected him as his king. He knew that God put him there as his king, which is insane. And David had plenty of opportunities to take out Saul, but he didn't because he knew that God had put Saul there for such a time as that, okay? So that's where he was at. But this psalm also reveals that David was in great danger, okay? From people who were doing evil, people that were lying about him, spreading rumors about him, people actually wanted to kill him, okay? But in spite of this dangerous, life-threatening situation he was going through, he was confident, he was courageous, and he was unafraid, okay? Now, David teaches us here that when we have a relationship with God, and that when we trust in him, God will help us overcome the fears that can paralyze our lives. And you and I both know that there are many people right now that feel paralyzed because of everything that's going on. But we have to continue to place our trust in God. We have to continue to keep living our life daily with God and with our families. Keep on hoping for a future because God is our salvation. He is our deliverer. But here in this text of actually all of chapter 27, David talks about three things. He talks about fear of circumstances, fear of failure, and fear of the future. Now, when we look at fear of circumstances, David looked by faith to the Lord, and he saw his circumstances from God's point of view. He was able to see his circumstances from God's perspective. You see, David magnified everything to God, and as he magnified everything on God, everything else became smaller. When we face circumstances, we have a tendency of magnifying the problem, making God smaller himself. No, it should be vice versa. We see things from God's perspective, and David saw things from God's perspective. David was reminded of how God has delivered him, and it was a salvation, and that God would save him again. Now, the Lord was everything that David needed, just as God is everything that we need even to this day, okay? God is our light in the darkness. God is our strength during a time of weakness. And God is our salvation when we need to be delivered. He will deliver us and He will save us. No matter how bad things look, He will deliver. Okay, the second is fear of failure. David was very confident in the Lord. He was very secure as an individual, very secure in his walk with God. And it's one thing to remain strong in the Lord when we go to church and when life is going great, but it's another thing to remain in the Lord while our enemies are attacking us, while we're at war. There's a big difference. That's why it's important to have that foundation in God. So when times like now that we're facing are coming, we're not going to be knocked down. We maybe go back and forth and waver a little bit, but we're going to stand firm on the promises of God because our lives are built on the foundation of God and His Word. Now, when David would cry out to God, God answered in his heart and said this, "Seek my face." And David was constantly seeking the face of God. Are we seeking God face daily? We should be seeking Him daily, especially with what we're going through now. But even when things get back to normal, even before this, have we been seeking God daily in our lives? Because that's what David was constantly doing. Now, fear of failure. David was wise. He was a wise soldier. He was a wise friend. He was a wise leader. The guy was amazing. Even though he made some mistakes, which we all do, he was very wise. And he knew that even though he won a battle, there was no guarantee that the enemy would stop attacking him, okay? David was not brought down. He was not discouraged. He was not broken or dismayed, by the length of the conflict. War's going for a long time. He was being chased for a long time. People trying to kill him. And even though this conflict was lasting a long time, he was still continuing to remain faithful in God. And guess what? God delivered him. I know many of us, these past few months have been tough. It's a tough conflict for many people, a tough challenge. But we need to continue remaining in God and trust in Him, knowing that He is going to deliver us. He's going to restore us. He's going to revive us, okay? In our country, churches, everything are going to thrive again. Why? Because we have our God that we trust in. Now, David asked the Lord to guide him all the time. Even during the times of trouble, he asked God to guide him. And David believed and he knew that God's goodness and protection would follow him everywhere he'd go. Why? Because David was going where God was guiding him. Because David trusted in God's direction. He trusted in God directing his present and his future. Are we trusting God right now with our present? And are we trusting God with our future? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. And I'm going to end with this. Your hardest times often lead to the greatest moments of your life. Keep the faith. It will be worth it all in the end. My friends, keep the faith. It will all be worth it in the end. So remember, let's make a declaration of faith, trusting and knowing that God will deliver us. God is our salvation. He is our strength. He's our light in the time of darkness, man. It's important for us to be confident, courageous, and unafraid, just like David was. All right? Love you guys. Hope you enjoyed this. And you guys all have a great week. And we'll talk to you later, all right? God bless. Bye.